guys, it's Megan, and in today's video, I'll be showing you a few DIY gifts that you can make with your Cricut Maker. And real quick, before we jump into it, I wanted to give a huge thank you to Cricut for sponsoring this video. Not only can you make unique and personalized gifts with the Cricut Maker, it's also the perfect holiday gift for any crafty people in your life. The Cricut Maker cuts over 300 different materials. It cuts paper, vinyl, and iron-on just like previous models, as well as things like chipboard, basswood, and even fabric. My Cricut Maker has made it possible to create so many new things that I never would have been able to make without it. It's a little pricey up front, but I use it all the time, especially around the holidays. The first project I made were these car coasters. One of the most popular items that I see people customizing with a Cricut machine is these tumblers or travel mugs, and these would go perfectly with something like that. For this project, I used Cricut's 2mm heavy chipboard, a purple Cricut StrongGrip mat, masking tape, Cricut premium vinyl, a green StandardGrip mat, glitter, Mod Podge, and UV resin. Begin by placing your vinyl on a StandardGrip mat and cut out your design. I did a floral design, but you could choose anything you like. I'd highly recommend checking out Cricut Access. It's a subscription service that provides thousands of images for you to use in your Cricut Design Space projects, or you can upload your own image. After cutting out the vinyl, I placed some 2mm chipboard on my StrongGrip mat. I used masking tape to tape down the edges of the chipboard. This next step is super important. Make sure that you change the material setting in Cricut Design Space, and don't forget to switch out the fine point blade for the knife blade. Also remember to move the white rollers over to the side when you're using the knife blade. I make a lot of projects with multiple materials like this, and that's the number one thing that you have to remember. Pay attention to what material that you're using. When that's finished, remove the masking tape from the edges and pop the coasters off the mat. This next step is optional, but I covered my coaster with Mod Podge and sprinkled glitter on top. If you don't want glitter, you could also paint the coaster with acrylic paint, or cover it with vinyl. While that was drying, I weeded out my vinyl decorations. To seal the glitter, I covered the coaster with a thin layer of UV resin. This stuff is perfect for chipboard projects. It makes them super sturdy, and it gives it an acrylic-like finish. You could probably use regular 2-part epoxy resin as well, but that takes 24 hours to dry and your girl is not that patient. Once the resin's cured, use some Cricut transfer tape to pick up your vinyl design and transfer it to the coaster. Use the Cricut scraper tool to make sure that the vinyl is stuck on there and carefully remove the transfer tape. I covered the vinyl with another layer of UV resin to seal it in. Once that's cured, your car coasters are ready to go. I made these 2.75 inches in diameter to fit in my car, which seems fairly standard from the information that I could find. These would be great to give as a set with a matching tumbler. You could even go all out and do a whole car theme if you know someone who just got their license. You could make them a keychain, a car decal, or anything else that you could think of to personalize. This next project was something that I made for my mom. She loves these little gnome Christmas decorations that have been popular for the past few years, so I thought she might like one that she can keep up all year round. For this project, you'll need 2 sheets of Cricut 2mm heavy chipboard, a brown Cricut fine point pen, acrylic paint and/or paint pens, UV resin, E6000 glue, and Velcro. Start by taping your chipboard to your StrongGrip mat just like before. Make sure you've selected heavy chipboard as your material and that you've inserted your marker and your knife blade. Feed the mat into the machine and let it roll. Cutting chipboard takes a while. This took a couple of hours to cut, which is much longer than most of the other projects that I've made, but it was all worth it in the end though. After my first mat was finished cutting, I removed the chipboard pieces, stuck on a new piece, taped it down, and cut out the remaining few pieces. While you're waiting for those, you can start painting. This was probably the most time-consuming part, but having some of the lines pre-drawn helped a lot. I started with the gnome. I wanted him to be sort of a neutral color, so I painted his hat and his body gray. Then I began to fill in the beard. I painted this in small sections for some reason. I don't really know why, but I painted the beard white and separated it into sections with some dark gray lines. I made his nose a skin tone that's similar to mine, but obviously you could make it darker or lighter if you want. Now it was time to paint all those tiny little hand pieces. I'm not going to make you sit through me painting all 15 because that would take a while, but here was my basic process. I painted the object that the gnome is holding first, let that dry, then add in any details, either with more paint or a Posca pen. And when that dried, I filled in the hands. Again, super helpful having those lines already there. I also outlined each hand with a black Posca pen. I don't know where that footage got to, but after that, I covered the top of each piece with a layer of UV resin. If you don't have resin, you could use Mod Podge instead. Here's a quick look at all the finished hand pieces. I made 15 altogether. I covered the gnome with UV resin as well. And I placed the plasticky side of a piece of Velcro where his hand pieces will go. Hopefully that makes sense. You know how Velcro has a soft side and a rougher side. I probably should have made the Velcro a little bit smaller, but it's a little bit late for that now. Thankfully it worked out though. And if you don't want to use Velcro, you could also use magnets. I thought about doing that, but I figured people are more likely to have Velcro than magnets, but that's also an option. He was a little bit too big to fit under my lamp, so I cured the resin one side at a time. I used some E6000 glue to stick a piece of the soft side of the Velcro to the back of each hand piece. I kept the gnome close by to kind of help me see where I should glue the Velcro. To finish the project, I cut a piece of 1/2-inch plywood that was 5 by 9 inches. I painted the plywood brown. Don't forget to paint the edges. If you don't have access to plywood, you could place your gnome inside of a dollar store picture frame. You could put scrapbook paper inside the frame and then glue the gnome to the glass part. I stuck my gnome onto the wood with some E6000 glue. To store the extra hand pieces, I painted the small wooden crate from Michael's. It had already been painted as part of a previous project, so I just sanded it and repainted it brown. And that was it. My original plan was to glue the crate to the back of the plywood to act as a stand, but it actually stands up fine without gluing it, so I ended up leaving them separate in case she wants to hang it. The last project I made was this hooded character blanket. I made mine a cat, but you could modify this project a little to make any animal or character you can think of. For this project, you'll need one 18 by 24 piece of cotton fabric and one 18 by 24 piece of fleece for the hood. For the main part of the blanket, you'll need 1.5 to 2 yards of fleece, depending on the size of the recipient. You'll also need pins or clips, a sewing machine, a fabric marker, a ruler, some Cricut iron on vinyl, and an EasyPress or iron. Fold the piece of cotton fabric with the right sides together. Now your fabric should be 18 by 12 inches. Sew along one of the 12-inch sides with a straight stitch. Do the same thing with the 18 by 24 piece of fleece. Fold the fabric with the right sides together and sew along the 12-inch side. And by the way, this project has a 1/2-inch seam allowance for pretty much everything. Take the cotton piece and open it up like this so the seam makes a little triangle. Pin the fabric in place. Mark a line 4 inches down from the peak of the triangle. Mark another line 4.5 inches down and cut along the 4-inch line. Repeat this for the fleece. Unfold the rectangle like this and pin the fabric in place. Make a line 4 inches from the top and another line 4.5 inches from the top. Cut along the 4-inch line. Sew the cotton piece with a straight stitch along the 4.5-inch line. Leave the fleece alone though, don't sew that yet. Now for the ears. I made a paper template for these, so you can make this project with any machine. Cut out 4 triangles for the ears. Sew along the 2 longer edges, then flip them right side out. I cut a triangle from pink iron-on and pressed that on top of each ear. I filled each ear with a little bit of polyfill stuffing and sewed the opening closed. The ears ended up being a little bit too floppy, so to fix that, next time I think I'd add some wire in there or something to help them hold their shape a little better. To attach the ears to the hood, make sure that both are facing this way, with the right side up. Place each earpiece inside the fleece part, lining up the edges of the ear with the edges of the fabric. Sew a straight stitch along the line that we drew earlier, and flip it right side out to make sure it looks okay. Notice how the hood is kind of pointy like this? We want to make it more curved. With the fleece wrong side facing out, draw a curve along each side of the hood, and sew along the lines you drew. Line up the curves from the fleece with the cotton as best you can. Mark curves on the cotton piece as well, again with the wrong side facing out, and sew along the curves. Trim off any excess fabric along the corners. Turn the fleece right side out, leaving the cotton piece with the wrong side out. Place the fleece hood inside the cotton one and pin the edges together. Sew along the top and the sides of the hood, leaving about 6 inches at the bottom open. Turn the hood right side out and you should have something like this. Pin it back together and sew a top stitch around the top and the sides of the hood. For the base of the blanket, cut a piece of fabric that's 1.5 to 2 yards long. For the top and bottom of the blanket, I made a rolled hem. Fold the edge over about 1/2 inch, then fold it over again and pin in place. Find the center of the blanket and pin the bottom edge of the hood inside the hem like this. Sew along the top and bottom edges of the blanket with a straight stitch. For the shortest sides of the blanket, I just folded them over once and did a straight stitch. You could stop here, but I decided that I wanted to make little pockets for your hands. I took a 12 by 12 piece of fleece and cut it in half diagonally. I folded up the bottom edge of each triangle about 1/2 inch and hemmed them with a straight stitch. After sewing, I cut off these extra bits of fabric at the ends of each triangle and pinned it to the back side of the blanket. I sewed along the edges, flipped it back to the right side, and finished up the edges with a top stitch. I repeated this on the other side. I used my Cricut Maker to cut out a face and some paws from iron-on vinyl. I used my Cricut EasyPress too to attach the face to the hood, and the paw prints to the little hand pockets. Let the iron-on cool, and you're done! This is actually the most comfortable thing ever, 10 out of 10. I think this would be so cute if you did it with a Christmas character. You could do a white hood for Frosty the Snowman, a green hood for the Grinch, a brown one for Rudolph, or another one of their favorite characters. So that was everything for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and again, a huge thank you to Cricut for sponsoring this video. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos just like this one. My merch, my website, and all of my social media will be linked down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys later. Bye!